Retail therapy. It was day 3 of double shifts, and I had just about had it. I hope you aren't one of those people, but if you are, listen. Just because a person works behind a counter at a store does not make them less of a person. If we weren't there, how would you buy your stuff? If you are one of those people, then perhaps my story will help you straighten up your act. Anyways, like I said, it was the damn 3rd day of pulling double shifts, and I was irritable. If it doesn't ring up, it's free, right? Do you know how many times a day I hear that? It doesn't work that way. I forced a smile. The slime ball on the other side of my register growled at me as his face soured. Need to learn a little respect, boy. I don't have to shop here. I choose to shop here. With an attitude like that, you'll chase all your customers away. I was just joshing ya, okay. So he kinda had a point. Sorry, sir, I meant no disrespect. My smile tightened over my gritted teeth. Better not have. Now gimme some smokes. My usual, it's always gimme. No one ever actually asks nicely. And do you know how many people I see in a day? I'm sorry, but which was your favorite again? Please don't start yelling. Please don't start yelling. The face he made at me now would sour milk. Reds, soft pack, same as I get every time I'm in here. All right, here you go, and do you mind if I see your ID? Here it comes. Boy, I'm old enough to be your daddy. I'm sorry, sir. I still have to see it. It's the law, and they've been really cracking down lately. God damn it. It's not the law. You are really trying my patience today. I pull the cigarettes back and his face starts to turn red. I can't sell without ID. I could lose my job or get jail time. They don't card me at the place down the road. Then go there, I think to myself. But I just force another tight-lipped smile. He grumbles as he opens his wallet and shows me his ID. It took 5 whole seconds. The fuss he made took a minute. You do the math. I slide his smokes back across the counter, and he snatches them from me, throws a 20 at me, and then scowls for the rest of the purchase. As soon as he leaves the store, I drop my fake smile and take slow, calm breaths. I've been working at this store for nearly 10 years. I made manager 8 years ago, which means I've put up with twice the crap as the average employee. I deal with customers, distributors, and the owners of the store. Not to mention shitty employees who don't want to actually do the work we pay them for. It gets to you after a while, but still it pays the bills. It might not be the career I had dreamt of as a kid, but it is a job, and those are hard to come by. This is my day. It happens over and over with different variations, but most customers are the same. They treat us like we are lesser life forms, and then forget we exist, unless, of course, they plan to make a complaint. It's usually over the dumbest shit, too. So-and-so didn't double bag my items. Joe Blow put my bread on top my eggs, and I didn't like it. My card declined at the pump, and it's your fault. You get the idea. Of course, we just have to sit there and take your abuse. Defending ourselves is against company policy because, as you know, the customer is always right. I hope you read that in the snide voice I said it in. Right before my shift ended, my boss called me into the office. So, Cade, I'm sure you've heard, but I'm planning on retiring. Nope. This is the first time I've heard it. You've been with us the longest and know how stuff works around here, so I'm recommending you for my job. I've got to admit I didn't see that coming. Well, dang, Bob, I say with as much untouched in my voice as I can muster. We sure will miss you round here. So you want the position, you can take your time to think about it if you want. You bet your right nut sack I want it. Of course, that's not what I say. I'd be honored, Bob. I'm especially grateful that you thought of me first. Okay, so maybe I'm a little of a suck-up, but that kind of promotion means more money and less hours, better benefits too. Great, great, that's fantastic. We'll start your training tomorrow. Fan-fucking-tastic. Tomorrow was supposed to be my day off. Awesome. So I guess I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early. The next day I show up, but Bob apparently forgot he was training me and took a golf day. Not sure what he was planning on training me on. Anyways, I already do all of his work. The weeks of training go by in a blur. I got a lot of. Guess you already do that, huh? From Bob. But mostly it was fine. Bob retired and the store was mine. I never realized how much shit he put up with until he left. Customers screaming getting escalated up to me about how they couldn't get a sale price today from a sale last week, or how we sold out of a limited product. And don't even get me started on employee write-ups and call-outs. I'm not a magician. I can't pull product that we're out of my ass. I did my best to back up my employees, though, so that felt good. Nothing's worse than telling a customer something simply can't be done, and then the manager comes up and does whatever the customer wants. Makes you feel like an ass. So things were going great. My blood pressure finally dropped down to an acceptable rate. I actually got my days off, and the store never burned down. I worked out the schedule with my employees and ended up with less call-outs. Everything was just dandy until corporate decides to implement some new rules. Now when a customer wants to buy smokes or booze, we have to swipe their ID. It loads their birthday into the computer and unlocks the sales screen for the controlled substance. Then they took it a step further. If a customer wants a store card, we have to load all their info into the card. Name, birthday, address, email. It's hard enough getting them to show us their ID, and now you want everything. It was a nightmare. I had a mountain of complaints to sift through. I apologized so much the first few weeks of the new rules that the words, "I'm sorry, sir, ma'am," began to sound funny, like I wasn't saying them right. So many complaints, in fact, that I got fired. 'Cause of course it's all my fault that customers don't like giving out that much of their personal info. So here I am, jobless, because a bunch of you didn't like us doing our jobs. It's fine though, juiced fine, because when you lodge a complaint at our stores, it gets filed with your customer number, so we can find you to make things right. I took gargantuan pile of complaints with me when I packed up my office. I figured I could blow off some steam with a little retail therapy. I started with Mr. Gimme My Smokes Johnson. I followed him for a couple days, learned when his wife left to go to her book club, and when he got home from work, I watched his neighbors' routines too. I had a 60-minute window. I snuck into his house through the window they always left open. I punched him in his fat throat the minute he shut his front door, then tied him to a chair. I stuffed a carton of his soft pack reds down his throat one cig at a time until his Adam's apple bulged out grotesquely. I cut his ID up into tiny triangles and pushed them into his eyeballs after I sliced off his eyelids. Eyeballs are actually pretty tricky to puncture with something like the thin shards of a flimsy driver's license. I barely made it out of the house before his wife returned. Hearing her scream like that, God, it was a turn-on. I went back to the store that was once mine and bang, one of the cute little cashiers in the back stockroom. She walked funny for a few days afterward. Next I went after Mrs. I dash demand, dash you dash give dash me dash this dash it, dash the dash hole, dash sale, dash price Smith. She really wanted those 10 cans of tuna for the same price she got them 2 weeks prior. I bagged some up for her real nice and a pillowcase, which I then beat her to death with. Pretty sure not even dental records will help after I was done with her. Then I went and donated all the tuna to the local animal shelter. A bunch of homeless cats are currently dining like kings on evidence. This I single quotes am dash super dash important dash gonna dash talk dash on dash my dash cell dash phone dash and dash glare dash at you was next. Stalking her was a lot more fun. I grabbed her on her morning run. I shoved that fucking cell phone down her throat and left her body in the woods. It's been a month, and they still haven't found her. Guess she was real important, huh? My 4th session of retail therapy took me to the home of Mr. Moneybags. God, I had hated that man. Every fucking time he came to the store, he complained about something. He would escalate the smallest infraction to the point where he was screaming in anger and someone was in or near tears. He always had to add, "Do you know how much money I've spent here?" Like pissing into the ocean, sir. Pissin' in the ocean. It took me a while to figure out the best way to alleviate my rage. This douche. I took a sander to his skin first. Because his voice grated my nerves, I could have used a cheese grater, but I worried he'd pass out from blood loss before I was done with him. After I had exposed his dermis, I spritzed a lovely homemade concoction of lemon juice, salt, vinegar, and Carolina Reaper over his raw flesh. I asked him if he really knew just how much money he spent at anyone's store. When he couldn't answer, I cut out his tongue and watched him asphyxiate on his own blood. I'm still going through my pile looking for lucky number 5. So ask yourself this: when was the last time you treated a lowly little retail worker like a piece of shit? Did you yell and scream about something completely out of their control and refuse to listen as they tried to explain the situation to you? Did you insist on having something your way because the customer is always right, even though you know you were in the wrong? Did you abuse an employee because they were just doing their job and following the rules? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you best hope it wasn't at my store. Story 2. Retail is hell. Everyone lies on their resume, everyone, and I am no different. I moved recently and left a good job. Not that I'm complaining. It was totally worth it. Started over in a new city with the love of my life. Sacrifices had to be made, and for her, I was happy to do them. I assumed with my master's degree, I'd have no trouble finding work. Might have been fine if the goddamn pandemic did happen. So I started dropping 20-30 applications a week. Shit, maybe more. No luck. I was getting depressed and playing a bit too many video games to deal. My lovely girlfriend, Andrea, being the supportive smartass she is, suggested I add Monster Hunter to my resume. I, on the other hand, am crazy stubborn and I was livid I wasn't getting any calls. So I did it. Monster Hunter 15 years. partly because I thought no one was even reading it, but mostly because I was over it all. I sent the updated resume to a few dozen places, and wouldn't you know it, I got an email. I didn't notice until later it didn't look like any email address I'd ever seen. From 9 isn't for 6, 10, 10 and 6, Dick 1, 6P1Z 2, me. Mr. Simmons, I am pleased to see your resume come across my desk. We would be thrilled if you would come by tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The address is 665 Ladd Street. Please be prompt. I look forward to seeing you and welcome to the Walmart team. Lilith Dagan. I looked up the address, and it was way on the outskirts of town. I didn't think anything was out there. Andrea, my girlfriend, said. Yeah, I said, trailing off. What are the chances I'm going to get murdered? Well, it's not where I plan on murdering you, she replied, laughing. Thanks, babe. Very comforting. At 9:15 the next day I pulled into the parking lot. Sarlia insisted I call to check in. This can't be the right spot, I told her when she answered. Look. I sent her a picture of the large building in front of me, dilapidated, no markings, no cars in the parking lot, none of the familiar blue and yellow markings that accompanied these stores. The address was 665, 665 Ladd Street. That's the address on the building. Maybe go inside, just be careful and call me. I steeled myself and headed inside for what I expected to be an interview, except it wasn't an interview after all. If the outside looked nothing like a Walmart, the inside was a dead ringer, stacked shelves, those awful neon lights, even people wandering around. I made my way to customer service. The girl behind the counter smiled, and something about it made me nervous. It wasn't until later that it hit me. Her smile went literally from ear to ear. Once I was close enough, she clapped her hands together and giggled. You must be the new guy. I certainly hope so, I nervously replied. My appointment is with Ms. Duggan, I said, struggling. The girl smiled again and spoke into what looked like a goblet-shaped microphone. Ms. Dagon, she said, emphasizing the correct pronunciation. The new recruit is here. Perfect, came a response from the goblet. I started to turn to find a place to wait when I heard a pop and smelled the faint whiff of sulfur. I nearly fell over as a tall, ivory-skinned woman with onyx hair and crimson lips. She was wearing a blank pantsuit. Her perfume was weird. It smelled faintly of, and I know this sounds insane, fire and smoke. You must be Mr. Simmons, she said provocatively. I am, I responded, shaking her hand, I swear. For a brief second her eyes flashed yellow. Why don't you follow me to your new office? I tried to hide my excitement as I asked. I thought this was just an interview. You don't want to ask me anything? Oh, we can't let someone with your qualifications get scooped up. I've left the job offer, as well as salary and job description, on your desk. Look it over and we can discuss benefits. Before I could respond, she was off. She moved with an almost inhuman speed, and I was practically sprinting to keep up with her. She led me to the back of the store and stopped in front of a plain white door. She opened it to a small reception area. Seated at the desk was a young, olive-skinned woman with black hair. She stood and extended a hand. Mr. Simmons, so nice to meet you. I am Miss Sang, but you can call me Samara. Anything you need, she will get it for you, Ms. Dagan said with a smirk. I'm just a buzz away. Samara said with a wink. Behind her was a large ornate wooden door with several strange symbols and patterns carved into it. She took out a long silver key with more symbols carved into it and handed it to me. "Are you sure you don't want to interview me?" I stammered. "There's no need. You are exactly who we are looking for. Now here's the thing. I didn't immediately put together my little white lie with the email. Any questions or concerns vanished when I opened the door and my jaw dropped. I barely heard Miss Dagan say, "Bus Samara," when you finished the documents. I am no writer. I certainly do not think I possess the words to describe what I saw. It must have been for 100 square feet. Easy. I know that sounds totally insane for a freaking Walmart, but I swear it's true. The left side was covered end to end in bookshelves. There could have been 2,000 books, maybe more, and they look old. The floor was solid white marble that seemed to vibrate. The right wall was covered in books, but the bookshelves halfway down were set out further than the others. At the back of the room was a large obsidian desk. It was half the width of the room, and in the center was a stack of white papers. And holy shit, I almost forgot about the chair. It was a high-back, black leather chair with massage options. It felt like I was sitting on angel corpses. On my side of the desk were 3 buttons set into the stone desk. I pushed the closest one, and a computer pushed its way out of the desk, sending the papers flying. I dropped to the ground to collect them. There came a short buzz, which startled me and made me bump my head on the desk. "Mr. Simmons, have you finished with the documents?" Almost," I said, rubbing my head. "You have to push the middle button if you want to be heard, sir," Samara said, snickering under her breath. "It'll be done in a few minutes." "Very good, sir. Just tell me when you're finished," she said, the sweetness oozing off her voice. The first page was a few sentences describing Midites. "Help store remain secure at all times. Understand the possible threats and prepare for them. Notify management immediately if you cannot handle a threat. Talk with customers to understand their needs and fears. Make sure associates are protected from any and all threats. Observe customers and associates and ensure they are not a threat. Never allow any harm to come to management or store owner. Stop any threats to building or management. Take note of all beings deemed dangerous by headquarters. Ensure the portal is protected and secure. Remain on scene of incidents until all threats are vanquished. Secure the store at the close of every day. V7 for 61 by V8 or 70 to 61 6 or 6 or for Z5Q or 5P for V or Q or for RV or 5 Uni S1 for S or V6B17 for 517 YNOQ6 or 517 Y51S6U15 RP15 or 5661 B17. Some of the language struck me as odd. Portal. Did that mean the doors? Kind of a strange term for it. And what was with all the talk about threats? Did they really expect that much trouble in the store? That code at the bottom struck me as weird, too. I've seen printing code like that, so I did not think much of it. But it was still familiar. Something felt off about this whole thing, and for a second I considered running. Until I saw the next page. Compensation was $10,000 a week. My savings was running extremely low, and Andrea and I were cutting things close, and the bills were really piling up. I did not even think about it. I signed. Anyone in my position would. That was more money than I ever had. Obscene money. I buzzed Samara. But before I could even say anything, a voice said, "I assume the offer is to your liking." "Jesus Christ," I exclaimed, "how do you keep doing that?" She grinned, and I could not help but notice her eyes again. "There's a manager back entrance. Now, if you are satisfied, you can head home to Andrea," Ms. Dagan said. "Oh shit," I thought to myself. She probably thinks I'm dead. I checked my phone. -1 missed texts and from missed calls. I looked up to thank Ms. Dagan, but she had already disappeared. On the desk was a set of keys, a check, and a note. "Welcome aboard. These are the keys to the store. Please start tomorrow. Store opens at 8. See that it's ready by then. And quit with the formalities. Lilith is fine." I headed out to the car and called Andrea. "Are you kidding me?" she asked after I filled her in. "There's no way. He'll bring the contract home. I already got a check for the first week. Baby, we can finally start having the life we deserve." We celebrated with a fancy dinner, had a few too many drinks, and talked about the future. I thought the days of having nightmares had long passed me, but I had one that night, and every night that week. I can still hear it, feel it. Fire, incredibly hot fire, and laughter, sharp female laughter. It was so hot I checked myself when I woke up, expecting to find burn marks, and the laughter was so familiar, I just wasn't able to place it the first night. The first few days were uneventful. I spent my time messing around with the camera system and learning the store layout. The more I walked around, the more I swear it was bigger on the inside. And in the dead center was a large circle, maybe 6 feet across, with weird symbols around it. Whatever paint was used for it, it dried thick and flaky red. Some of the items I found were weird as shit. There were sections selling bones, charms, and all kinds of candles, and they had this large icy machine, I think. Except it was warm, really warm, and there weren't cups, just baggies. Why anyone would want warm cherry syrup in a bag is beyond me. It was certainly weird, but the job was easy, and the pay was amazing. That change at the end of the first week. I came in to find Samara setting up breakfast, chicken fried steak and eggs. Did I tell you that was my favorite? I had it with my grandpa all the time when I was a kid. Your grandpa, huh? No, you never mentioned it. It's been a favorite of mine for a long time. The guy who had your job before you taught me to make it. What an odd coincidence. I began when a ruckus on the computer screen drew my attention. In the back of the store, a man had a woman pinned to the ground. He had her hands held down and was spitting her. The camera wasn't great, but I thought I saw blood. I rushed toward the door when Samara said, "You might want to push the third button." "No, I have to go," I said, rushing out the door. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Whatever mysteries that button held left my mind when I got to the scene. As I rounded the corner, my heart fell out of my chest. I was frozen in place, that the images before me are forever burned into my head. The man had the woman pinned to the ground and was indeed biting her. He had a mouth of razor-sharp teeth, rows and rows of them. This black thick substance dripped from his face and his teeth and oozed from her neck. The look of pure hatred and deep hunger shook me to the core. And then there was the woman. I say woman in quotes because she looked less human than the thing eating her. She looked like a gray, rotting corpse. Bits of flesh hung from her body in chunks, and there were festering, pestilent sores leaking all over her body. Jesus, the smell, putrid, doesn't begin to cover it. It smelled like 2-week-old baby diapers mixed with rancid meat that was left in the sun for a month. I was truly terrified. Frozen in place, I tried to breathe. Anything but only a gurgle came out. The man turned his head sharply and stared at me. "Are you the new security? This is unacceptable. I damn near got killed by this thing. They aren't supposed to be allowed in here. Where's the manager?" Then came the pop and familiar smell of sulfur. "Miss Dagon Lilith," I said, still trying to compose myself. "What happened here?" she demanded. I began. "The damn ghouls somehow got through the portal and tried to attack me. I did what I had to do to defend myself." "Security," he snarled, pointing at me, "really needs some work." Her eyes flared yellow again, and I felt my very soul shiver. "Yes, we are in the process of improving," she responded, glaring into my very being. "Your office." "Nah," she commanded. "Oh, yeah, okay. What about the—" She glanced over her shoulder and snapped her fingers. The body caught fire and quickly burnt away, leaving nothing but a small pile of ash. "Maintenance will sweep it up. Now, let's discuss your performance." I was shaking. What had I got myself into? Who or what did I work for? And what in the actual hell did I just see? These questions ran through my mind as I sat in my office. "I am still waiting on her to arrive. Maybe you can give me some advice on what I should do." The meeting didn't go well. I am still shaking, quite literally. In my boots, I fucked up. There is no way I should have taken this job, or more specifically, I should have paid better attention. I can't believe I missed it. If you haven't figured it out yet, you are about as slow as I am. The first letter of each line of my rules spells out exactly why I was hired. I was hired to actually hunt monsters. Actual, factual monsters. The myths and legends are real. I am about as shocked as you are. I was still thinking something was wrong with me when Lilith popped in again. "How did you let this happen?" she fumed. She glanced at the bookshelf. "And you didn't open that. It was a fucking ghoul. Get your shit together or there will be actual hell to pay." This time I was certain. Her eyes flashed a fiery yellow. "Samra, get him up to speed or it's your ass on the line too," she yelled before vanishing before my eyes with her trademark pop. "Not even here a week and already fucking up," Samara said from the speaker. "Push the third button. It'll be in there in a minute." I did as I was told and watched in amazement as the walls on the right slide over. Appearing before me was what can best be described as an arsenal. There must have been 20 different swords, 3 dozen knives, shotguns, rifles, and pistols. There were various bags and bottles containing who knows what. What in the blue fuck I began when I felt a presence next to me. I turned and jumped at Samra. She giggled while I exclaimed, "I really wish you people would stop that shit. We aren't exactly people, or haven't you put that together yet?" This might be a stupid question, but why, I asked, gesturing to the weapons and items without continuing. She sighed and walked over to a panel next to the swords. A flick of her wrist opened it, revealing several glasses and decanters of liquid. She grabbed one with a brown substance swirling inside and poured the glasses, offering one to me. I hesitated briefly, and she just giggled. "It's whiskey, idiot," she said, playfully punching my arm. I swallowed it in one gulp and asked, "What the fuck I shattening around here? You really didn't read the job ad, did you? or the description she gave you. I put in so many I hardly remember. As far as the description, it seemed a bit weird, but if all you saw was the money, you really are like the last guy. You've never hunted a monster before, have you? Is that what got me the job?" She almost fell out of her chair laughing at me. "Look around you. Why do you think all this is here?" "I can't fight. Never even been in one," I said, helping myself to more whiskey. "You better learn or we are both screwed." Samara walked over to the wall of swords and tossed me one. My coordination being what it is, I tried to catch it by the blade end and dropped it completely. She looked dumbfounded. "Okay, you really need work. I was hoping you might be a natural." She showed me how to hold the sword and came at me. We moved like dancers. If one of the dancers had 2 left feet and 0 rhythm. As I tried to figure out what I was doing, I started asking her questions. "So monsters as I know them are real?" "Yup." "Zombies?" "Yes." "And ghouls, as you saw, different species." "Shapeshifters?" "Yes." "Werewolves?" "Yea, but they can change whenever they want." "None of that moon crap." "Vampires?" I asked as we clashed swords, mine staying in my hand this time. "Actually, no, really," I responded in disbelief. She laughed and knocked the sword from my hand. "Of course vampires are real." As I struggled to think of something else, she stopped and looked me right in the eye. "Before you ask, demons are real too." Her eyes went full black and my heart damn near dropped out of my chest. Again. Why help me if you're a demon? This place is a safe ground. The boss decided common creatures needed a palace to get supplies, food, whatever, without having to bother humans. This is one of them. Pays to have someone who actually knows what they are doing protecting us. It's been years since we actually had someone. Somewhere along the way you humans stopped learning about us, stopped passing on how to hunt. If you're going to stay around, might as well help you. Maybe you'll save my life one day. We spent the rest of the day practicing with the swords and various other tools on the wall. After, while Samara cooked, I poured some drinks. "Okay, let's cover some basics," she said, making me a plate. "What do you know about vampires?" "Stake through the heart, no garlic, no sunlight, hates holy water, maybe something about silver." "None of it is true. Decapitation, that's the way, otherwise they keep coming." "Demons, you have no idea." "Holy water, special knife, ya get one right." "That," she said, pointed at an onyx-handled blade, "will kill any demon you come across. Keep it there unless you need it. If Lilith sees it missing, when there isn't a threat," she dragged her fingers across her throat. She glanced at the clock on the wall. "Do we have any logs, old video, anything left by the previous guy? He didn't leave on the best terms. Took most of that stuff with him when he vanished." "Vanished? Look, I like you. But Lilith said if I talk about any of that with you, I'd spent eternity suffering while she tortured me. I'd prefer for that not to happen. So just drop it. You might have to just trust me and figure the rest out on your own. Anyway, isn't it getting late? Shouldn't you be getting home? Oh shit, Andrea is gonna be pissed. Thank you for the help and the food. Don't thank me yet, and don't get yourself killed. I'd like to keep my own head for a little while longer." I passed out almost immediately when I got home. Andrea wasn't there when I got home, and she was still passed out when I got up to leave in the morning. I left her a note that said, "I love you. I want to tell you about the crazy day I had. I'll bring home dinner and wine. Today I resolve to figure some more things out. I filled my coffee and took another lap around the store. I am ashamed to admit it, but with all the excitement, I did check out the so-called portal. Right in the center of the store was another circle covered in ruins. I looked around and noticed the camera that was supposed to be pointed at it had been shifted. I said to myself, and made a note to get it fixed. There weren't many people, creatures, whatever in the store, so I headed back to the office, planning on training with Samara some more. I got in the office and made a fresh pot of coffee. Oddly, Samara wasn't there yet, so I went back on the floor to fix the camera. By the time I got back to the office, she was waiting for me with a uniform in her hand. You'll want to put this on, specially made. Oh, all right, the shirt and pants appeared to be just a basic security uniform, but on the inside there were more weird symbols embroidered. I went into my office to change and asked out the door. Hey, do I lock down the portal at the end of the night? I asked as I walked back out. Samara was holding what looked like a shotgun. She cocked it and fired at me. What the fuck? I screamed as I cowered. After a second or 5, I realized I wasn't dead. Her eyes flashed black for a second and she laughed. Protects you against some things. In this case, rock salt. Okay, first, how about a warning? Second, why rock salt? Today's first lesson. Ghosts, most of them wander in and don't bother anything. The ones that do, rock salt will dispel them. Should be enough to drive them away. If not, well, it's more complicated to put them totally to rest. Finding bones is troublesome at best. Finding bones, don't worry about it. Here, she said, tossing me the shotgun. Get a feel for it. Most of the shotguns have rock salt. The guns all have regular bullets in them. Should stop most things in their tracks, if only for a few moments. You asked about the portal. Yeah. How am I supposed to shut it down? You mean you haven't been, Anno? Come here. She walked me over to the runes on the ground by my door. See how these have been scrapped away? That lets us pass. Just repaint the markings each night. Sounds like a pain in the ass, but it'll only take you seconds and save you a world of hurt. We spent the rest of the day training and talking. Samara told me a little about the last guy who had my job. He apparently had my level of skills when he started, kept the job for 5 years. She wasn't firm on the details, but he had a falling out with Lilith and vanished. I pressed for more details, but she refused to elaborate. Same story as before. By the time I looked at the clock, it was time to go home. I hadn't even walked the store in a few hours. Before I went out to close down the portal, I checked the cameras. The camera above the portal had been moved again. What is it? She asked. It looks like, but movement across the other cameras interrupted me. I counted maybe a dozen things darting around the store with lightning-fast reflexes. She glanced at the camera, walked over to the wall, and tossed me a sword. I watched for a moment before asking, "Vampires?" She just nodded and ran out to the store floor. As soon as they saw me, they bared their fangs and came at me. I tried to remember what I had been trying to learn and baited them. When the first one lunged, I sliced its head clean off. The body fell on me, and blood gushed all over me. The others kept coming as I struggled to push the body off me. I glanced over at Samara to call for help and saw she had 5 corpses around her. Satan help me. You really need help. She came over and kicked the corpse off me and lifted me up. I waited to see if she would start helping, but she just smiled. I did my share. You better get on it. They looked pissed. I readied myself and led them around the store, trying to catch them one by one. A short time later I was out of breath and soaked in blood. Why in the hell did they attack like that? She asked, reading my mind. Go home, catch your breath, shower. He'll see what I can dig up. I can't leave. What if there's more things waiting for me? This is too much. Supposed to be a simple security gig until the world goes back to normal. Look, I'll be honest. This isn't normal. They don't attack like that, especially not in such a large group. Someone is doing this. You need to watch your back. Take one of the guns and a sword home just to be safe. Tomorrow we will make a plan. Story 3. Serious warning to people who work in retail. I'm not speaking out to cause a panic. I just want everyone to be very careful when they're shopping for the next few weeks. It hasn't even been a week since Thanksgiving, but anyone who works in retail knows that we're already in the Christmas season. Hell, your stores probably busted out all the decorations half a month ago. And the Christmas songs probably started the day after fucking Halloween. I dislike my job in retail as it is, but now that I'm practically dancing around danger at work every day, I cannot stand it. I'm constantly worried about my coworkers and customers, and I am scared to death about something happening to me if I make the wrong move. You're not hearing about it on the news, but people are disappearing in stores across the country. That's stores, plural, not one specific type of store or franchise. I don't know exactly how they disappear or where it is that they go, but one second they will be in the store and the next they'll be gone. The store I work for, owned by a rather well-known convenience store franchise, has had two people disappear inside of it. I have been questioned by the police, and so have my co-workers and managers. Security footage that was viewed during the investigation answered no questions, but I'll get to that in a bit. The first person who disappeared was an elderly woman named Donna Burke, who frequented the store. I wasn't working that day, but my manager told me that he watched her vanish from thin air as she reached far back into a shelf to grab a tin of coffee grounds. One second she was there, the next she wasn't. He called the authorities immediately because he couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. Our cashier that day, a college girl named Devon, says she saw the old woman come into the store at about 10:30 in the morning that day, but never saw her leave. The cops asked the store manager to see tapes from the security cameras. The footage, from what I've heard, didn't see it myself, showed the doors opening at around the time Yvonne had said Donna came in, but didn't show the old woman herself. Instead, again from what I've been told, the footage seemed to completely erase her. Everything she did was still on the tape, but Donna herself was not there. The cart she was pushing, there the footage showed it rolling through the aisles by itself. The products she picked out, also there the footage showed them floating off the shelves and into the cart. Everything was there except Donna. It spooked my store manager bad and confused the shit out of the police. Every single one of us were questioned extensively, even those of us who weren't working that day. That was on November 16th, about 2 weeks ago from the time I am writing this. Donna has not been found since. On November 24th, Last Thursday, a guy from out of state vanished in front of me. I was stocking the shelves in the electronics aisle, and he came up to me and asked where he could find batteries for his watch. I started walking him over to what he was looking for, but he stopped halfway and told me he saw them behind a product on one of the bottom shelves in that aisle. I saw him crouch down, reach for something on the shelf, and then he was gone. It freaked me out so bad I ended up puking my guts out after telling my manager. The process began all over again. The police were contacted. They looked at the security footage, got spooked by what they saw, which was, again, nothing, and reported another missing person. This round of questioning was a bit harder on us, as they believe one of us working there was some repeat offender kidnapping these people. But I knew what I saw. The guy fucking disappeared. His name was Ray McIntyre. The next few days at work were scary as shit. Cops in and out all day, asking all sorts of questions, keeping an eye on all of us and the customers. We all started experiencing some very weird shit. The general feel of the store became tense and unusual. Very few customers came in, and those that did said the place felt stuffy. When I was stocking the shelves, ID noticed that some of the brand names would change, from some well-known brand to something like McIntyre's chocolate or Donna's dish soap. It would do it quickly out of the corner of my eye before changing back again when I got a better look. My co-workers would see the same thing. Sometimes products would fall from the shelves simultaneously, hitting the floor at the exact moment. The most that fell all at once was 5. The probability of that happening is ridiculously low. On Saturday, the 26th, we started hearing screaming on the intercom. We have a default station put together by the company. Around this time of year, it alternates between really bland pop songs and Christmas music. Only 3 of us were staffed for Saturday night, and during a slow period in the store, my co-worker Jim stopped what he was doing and looked at me wide-eyed. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Harwat listened. The music continued, but then suddenly shifted in pitch before quickly cutting to a man screaming. Then it went back to the song just as fast. It did this once every couple of songs. Sometimes it was a man's scream. Other times it was a woman's. I got my laptop out of my work locker to briefly record one of the screams to show my boss. Here is the recording. The thought of the scream being from Ray McIntyre has given me nightmares for the past couple nights. It's as if he and Anna have somehow become part of the store, calling out for help in any way they can. When I showed the store manager, Tom, the recording this morning, he got really pale and asked if we could lunch together. I agreed. At break time, we hopped into his car but didn't drive anywhere. Instead, Tom broke down crying, saying he couldn't take it anymore, that he had to tell someone about what he knew. I told him he could trust my confidence, but after what he told me, I feel like it's my responsibility to let people know what's going on. Tom told me that a few weeks back he was getting a string of emails from corporate saying that they were sending inspectors from the FDA to check the store out. Tom was understandably confused. We didn't have a bad track record by any means, but the higher-ups insisted that he let these people come in and take a look. When the inspectors came, they seemed odd to Tom. When he tried to speak with them, they told him they were not at all associated with the FDA and that they were with some group called Courtesy Product Quality Services that wanted to test brand loyalty in our customers. A truck arrived that day with a bunch of miscellaneous products that the agency insisted they put on our shelves themselves. Tom had noticed that the crew from this agency were putting small devices on the products that he did not recognize. He said they resemble security tags, but they were metallic and constantly making a low humming noise. The people were putting these devices in places on the products people probably wouldn't see in their first glance, under the boxes, between the product and its bubble wrap, etc. When Tom asked what was going on, one of the representatives told him that they wanted to make sure that people were buying the right products instead of the wrong ones this Christmas season, and wanted to reinforce consequences if people picked out. And this is what Tom told me the guy said: abysmal product choices. He would not elaborate any further. He'll say it. My boss is a huge pushover. He couldn't bring himself to inquire anything more. The agency left, and he was left none the wiser. When I got home from work, about 2 hours ago, I started Googling everything I could about courtesy product quality services. I pulled up some very recent results on various forums and comment sections about people experiencing similar anomalies in stores they work at: grocery stores, clothing shops, organic food places, you name it. An hour later, I can't find anything on the topic, no matter how hard I Google it. Everything I've read is gone. People disappearing in stores everywhere without any explanation, and nobody is talking about it. What the fuck is going on? Is anyone else working in retail experiencing shit like this? Please, everyone, be safe shopping this season. Don't even consider grabbing what could be the wrong products. Story 4. There's something odd about the background music they play at my work. Time doesn't function like it's supposed to when you work retail. Seconds feel like minutes, and minutes feel like hours. Scientists have it wrong. It doesn't work. It stands still sometimes. Stephen Hawking never worked in a shoe shop. With every vapid ramble of a crazed woman in desperate pursuit of a miraculous fitting shoe that at once fits like a slipper, looks like a stiletto, and is cheap as a flip-flop, time just elongates. Point is, I get a lot of time to think and to watch the paint dry while at work. I hadn't been at the gig for long, but I had already become disillusioned with the trajectory of mankind. It'll do that to you, retail. I remember the day when I first noticed it. It was a regular Tuesday. A toddler had pulled a pile of boxes down from a shelf, and a small crowd of middle-aged women had strolled in with a list of demands longer than war and peace. In the center of the store, there was a sea of discarded socks and abandoned shoes, with their boxes and tissue paper splayed out like the innards of some soldier in her locker. No, not that one, dear. Oh, God, no. I want something trendy. Old Agnes said to me as I held up a rather hopeful slip-on with a zip fastening and an elusive white fit. She was a regular customer with bizarrely oversized feet. I briefly pondered what an 80-year-old considered trendy in a shoe, deciding that it was probably the precise opposite of what I viewed as fashionable. She shook her hand at me dismissively. Oh, you're not getting it. No, I want something that's comfy, but also something I can wear to a wedding all day. I want, oh, that'll do. Can you get me that size 8.5? Oh, that'll be just perfect with my fuchsia two-piece. She picked up a ghastly platform wedge in vomit green. I smiled at her patronizingly. I've told you already we don't do half sizes, I said to her in my best customer service voice. Well, that's just not good enough, Agnes began. I can't tell you what the contents of her ramble contained in its entirety, for I zoned out just after manager and writing a letter. I had given my attention to something else. I had noticed it. If you've ever been in a store, you'll be familiar with ambient music. Some of the trendy stores, in the words of Agnes, will play music from the charts. You know the stuff, perfectly listenable pop music that everyone can at least tolerate for the duration of a shopping trip. Other stores will opt for cheaper stock music that's designed solely to be used in commercial settings. My store was the latter. I'd never paid it much mind before. I sort of let it drift into the background. It was always there, a dull and slightly off-putting beat that was constantly overshadowed by the sound of screeching children or shuffling feet. As Agnes rambled on about unacceptable variety and size discrimination, I decided to give it a little listen in the hopes that it might completely drown her out. It's cold outside, I'd rather be inside. My fingers feel no more. Baby, am frozen to my core. Please let me in. The high-pitched voice of a woman trilled her odd lyrics in an off-puttingly jovial beat. Agnes was now red in the face and was wagging her purple-tipped finger at me. I'm close to the edge. Please pull me off the ledge. My blood has turned to ice. Baby, how it must be nice to live your life inside. I felt my brows knit together, and I pondered the meaning of the lyrics and the twisted mind that had concocted them. So deep in thought I was that I hadn't noticed that Agnes had stopped speaking. So, you ignoramus, what do you say? Do you have these in a size 9 or not? I'll need them in mustard, or it just won't do at all. Agnes snipped at me. We don't have any size 9s in store, Agnes, as I reminded you last week when you asked. I said, sensing her next request, I cut her off with a calming hand. How about I get you my manager? If you'd please just wait a minute. My legs are black. It's heat I lack. I have half a mind to stop being kind. Agnes is back. She's causing a bit of a fuss. I said to my manager. He shuffled his feet and with a great heave and groan pulled himself off his seat. He was a fat little man with a mustache and a beer belly and a rather unpleasant demeanor. He was work-shy and preferred his phone to productivity. By the way, before you go, you ever listened to the store's ambient music? Some of the lyrics are fucked, man. Can't say I've paid it much mind before, he said to me, shrugging his shoulders. I asked my colleagues if they'd noticed before, but none of them had either. It didn't seem like anyone cared, and why would they? It was crap license-free music designed with the sole intent of making the place seem more lively than it was. But I couldn't unhear it, put it in my heart. That big glass shard, then bake me into a tart. Use my fat as lard, render it down. I promise I won't frown. It was unhinged. Every song was more infuriatingly grim than the last. Who had written these songs? How had they wound up being played in a sad little shoe shop on the wrong side of Edinburgh? The questions haunted me. It was always women singing. Sometimes there would be a few women singing together, but there were never more than 2 at a time. Every song would be about dying in some horrendous way. My favorite was a little country-style track that always seemed to kick in just before closing. Bury me in peat and lime. It really ain't no big crime. It'll stink and rot, oh the grime. I do think it will take some time. It's just as well past my prime. Just listen to it. It's disturbed, I said to Vanessa, the assistant manager. She was quite young for a management role, but was terribly kind and generous. She did most of the legwork in the store. It's awful. I think we should write to the big boss, you know, above Jonathan. This isn't acceptable. It's water that I want. I'm starting to look gaunt. My mouth is bone dry, and when I try to cry, there's burning in my eye. It is a bit bizarre, but I wouldn't think too much of it. It's probably just some pretentious crazies who got turned down by one too many record labels. Nessa muttered. She cast her blonde hair behind her ear and, perhaps sensing my dissatisfaction with her response, let out a small sigh and continued. But I'll send an email over to merchandising. I'll admit to being a little bit curious myself. Vanessa sent an email, but did not immediately receive a response. In the meanwhile, I was forced to listen to the crap over and over. I tried to put it in the background of my thoughts. I welcomed screaming infants and whinnying pensioners, but found that even the screechiest child and the most impatient concession could not cover the lyrics of hell that my store played host to every day. I couldn't turn it off anymore. It was part of me. Even at home, it haunted me. I have not slept for a week. I cannot shut my eyes. Pulling them out was wise. When I drift away, a pain comes that I cannot convey. When Vanessa finally received a reply to her email, the pair of us huddled around her computer feeling oddly excited. In the end, it was a bit of a let-down. Dear Vanessa, as per your request, I have inquired as to the origins of the stock music we have provided for in-store use. The music was purchased on a disc over a decade ago by our now retired merchandising director. Its copyright holder is listed as CHRDH Productions. The disc was then copied and spread amongst our stores for future use. Where he purchased this disc is unknown. Multiple stores have advised the music as being unpleasant. We are in the process of sourcing alternatives. For now, you are required to continue playing the music as per our retail agreement with the shopping center. Many thanks, Jackie Greenway, merchandiser. Cheapskates, the lot of them, can't afford halfway decent music, so we're stuck listening to the soundtrack of hell. I grunted. Vanessa set to work Googling the company named CHRDH Productions. She didn't find much at all, only that a little shed in the Glencoe Mountains had been listed as their headquarters, and that CHRDH was Gaelic for torture, which was certainly in keeping with the content of the music. Eventually, our company did replace the music. As it turns out, there were a few more people like me who had paid attention to the lyrics, and they had been complaining for over a decade. Upper management finally buckled and gave us classical music instead. Mozart and Beethoven were a distinct improvement over the torture porn. With poorly contained glee, Vanessa slipped the old disc into a shadowy drawer in the stockroom. I thought that would be it, and it was, until yesterday. Two detectives came in yesterday. They were wearing suits and said they were from Scotland Yard. They wanted the disc. They slipped it into a little evidence bag and ignored the mess of our store. Jonathan seemed ambivalent. Vanessa was bemused. My colleagues didn't understand the magnitude of the moment. But I did. I knew. You see, I think a part of me always knew. There had always been something haunting about those songs. The voices would crack and break. as if frightened or restraining tears. It happened to them dented. He made them sing about what he did before he did it. The songs, there, they happened right. I grabbed the detective's arm before he left. He twisted around to look at me, both angry and perturbed. Please tell me I've been listening to these women every day for a year. It happened, at least we think, the detective said guiltily. Do you have him the producer? I asked shakily. Sometimes you don't need words to answer a question. The detective simply turned around and walked off. He vanished into the crowds of the shopping center, and I felt an awful sinking feeling tug at my center. It happened, the pyres, the tarts, and the snow that was so bitingly cold. They were real, they lived and suffered and died, and I listened, a spectator to their agony. I felt dirty. I was a participant, whether I wanted to be or not. Maybe that's why he sold the CDs, to make us all little part of his sick fantasy. Next time you're in a store, be careful not to listen to the music. You may not like what you hear. Story 5. I'm a manager my local retail store. Last month I was bitten by a Karen. When I first started my job at my local retail store, I thought it would just be a temporary source of income. Unfortunately, days turned 2 months, turned 2 years. Today, I'm a manager, but still stuck here droning on day to day, dealing with less than favorable co-workers, other members of management, and worst of all, customers. You've all heard the stories, and I can tell you they are all very true and equally horrifying. I've had to clean up dirty baby diapers out of shopping carts, answer questions about departments I was not at all familiar with, and dealt with unruly customers of all ages, races, and genders. I can tell you right here and now, I'd rather clean up 100 dirty diapers by hand than deal with what is known as a Karen. My latest experience with a Karen on the clock ended with my arm in the crazy bitch's mouth. Seriously, this 50-year-old soccer mom sunk her teeth right into my arm. Why would a person do this, you ask? Well, I suppose it's best to start way back to the beginning. I won't reveal the name of my store, as to do so publicly would jeopardize my employment. While that might sound like a good thing, I can assure you my problems would only increase. These people don't mess around, and if they knew that I was to mention them by name, I would face serious legal ramifications. That being said, I first got my job with the retail giant, which I will henceforth refer to as Save Mart in my local area, when I was 19 years old. I had attempted college before that and ended up, unfortunately, dropping out after my first year. So I found myself desperate for any kind of income, as my dreams of being a theater star were dashed. After about a week of waiting and biting my nails, I finally got a call back for an interview. I was interviewed by an eccentric fellow named George, whom I got the impression was a fun guy to hang out with on the weekends, even though he was a 40-year-old father. The interview went great, and I was hired almost immediately. I was only hired to be a temporary associate, as the store itself was expanding, and they needed the help for a simple 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday to Friday schedule. If I'm being honest, I loved my job those first 6 months. The work was simple, the pay was decent, and my co-workers, other temps around my age, were pretty cool. It was during this time that I met my best friend Bill, a gaming nerd that I connected with on a spiritual level, As time went on, the enjoyment I got from my job diminished, and as my temporary employment was near its end, my future became uncertain. I was very well liked amongst my fellow associates, and I had no problems with management, so I was 90% sure I would be hired on full time once the temp work was finished. That confidence, however, was thrown into question the day before the decision of my employment status, when I encountered my first Karen. As I stated before, I was hired to be a temporary associate tasked with helping to expand the store. This means I didn't really interact with the public directly, and if someone had a question for me, I could simply direct them to the appropriate associate for that particular department. This experience, however, caught me completely off guard. I was stocking some action figures in the toy department when I suddenly heard the sound of a throat being cleared. Kneeling, I looked up to see a rather large woman in a yellow sundress holding to Barbie dolls. "Can I help you?" I asked, knowing very well that I couldn't help her as this was not my primary department, and I knew next to nothing about Barbie dolls. But we were trained to always say that line. "Can you explain to me why there are so many of these colored dolls with the Barbies?" she said in a slightly irritated and irritating tone. I took another look at the dolls and noticed that one was African American and the other was Hispanic. Both Barbie brand, mind you, but not the classic Caucasian version this woman was used to. I myself am a mix of African American and Mexican blood, so I dreaded having this conversation. "Is there a problem?" I responded, trying my best to keep cool. "Yes, there is a problem, smartass," she answered, holding up the dolls higher as if I couldn't see them. "Barbie is a classic American brand that is meant to show the beauty of the average American girl. Where are the blonde hair and white skin? Barbie is not brown. So I want to know why these things are here." I could not believe that she just said that. I scoffed and replied with, "Excuse me." The tone of my voice gained some bass, and I could see the shit-eating grin slightly form in the corner of her mouth. Was this lady serious right now? I took a breath and tried to de-escalate the situation. "I'm sorry, Mom, but if we are out of stock of the specific type of doll you are looking for, you'll have to talk to this department's manager." She responded by rolling her eyes. "No, there are plenty of proper Barbies in stock," she said. "The problem is there should be more instead of these non-Barbies." She then threw the dolls on the floor and got right in my face. "Now get me your damn manager." Boy, I could feel my jaw clench and my hands form into fists. I was dangerously close to knocking this old racist bitch to the floor, but luckily my direct manager, Jim, stepped in. "Hey, Mike, why don't you go take your break?" he said. "I'll take care of our valued customer here." Valued customer? Was he serious? It took me a minute, but I soon realized he was merely trying to de-escalate as I had failed to. As I walked away, I looked back and I could see Karen yelling at Jim, who was miraculously keeping his cool. It wasn't really surprising, as he'd been with the company 4 years, so he surely knew how to deal with people like this. The next day, Jim gave me my final job performance review and brought up the incident from the day before. "Look, Mike," he began, "I know that must have been an extremely uncomfortable situation for you yesterday, and you have my sincerest apologies. But here at Save Mart, we have very strict policies concerning our customers." My stress level began to rise quickly. Was I going to lose my job over This, that being said, ha continued UVB annexation, and a acknowledge this was the first entry, so long as intenten, on behalf of Savile Telef Dilly Time Employment Torpy, Ega via Big Safriful, Omen, I said, thanks, Jim, thanks Amek, what shall the Vebenter, the start of Fafel to dodge up that wall of Philippies. One Bethella store Pfeffy tenures, I wash red to bear car talk tall, Yolak no those agaratondis, and bring them back and yethatwasm, and it isn't a tafoon job, I would say. Honestly, it was worst Jubert Terext, I was out sedinthental. On the hottest stum tristerenstistizen, Zepper King Blotwash, so I had a load of forgone talk. I dad to makes her FLFL telt so. And if there were a fair extent, dis pity aloft, I absolute wardifies. Needless to say, I've dealt with my varentory, in thought thinking wentering. It was final a product tart and tiered, which was a goal thedelated, as it would turn it, and tingem in a geritry, themus dread edwerder department managic, Uri needed for estim, Sisha Penadean, Andy hop at the Titeraquistal Len 20-year-old, Wilth question Sabla Wifshuk, Buten Migat, ik knew better, when you arrived, inner Lithru, it washer, the old resistikar effentanan, so wasn't a very heffenterftens, Kenny, keeping in mind that we are in the middle of a pandemic. Here was this massive 50-year-old woman right in Kenny's face. She was wearing no mask, of course, because she's a Karen, and spit was flying all over his face. All employees are required to wear masks, but a shocking number of people don't seem to understand how they work. Wearing masks do not protect you from potential infection. They are meant to keep your germs to yourself. So Kenny was freaking out. To make matters worse, Karen looked like absolute shit compared to the first time I'd seen her. I almost didn't recognize her with her once blonde, now gray Karen cut, blotchy-looking skin, and tired-looking eyes. The only reason I knew it was her was because of her stress-inducing voice and demeanor that I had not forgotten even after all these years. With years' worth of experience in my brain, I had hoped that this time round I'd be able to de-escalate this conflict much more successfully than our previous encounter. Swallowing my pride, I said the words, "Hey, Kenny, why don't you go take a break and I'll take care of our valued customer." I nearly threw up as I said this. "Whatever, man," he responded, "the rude little shit. I'd deal with him later, but for now I had to slay a monster." As Kenny walked away, I forced a smile and turned my attention to Karen. "How can I help you, ma'am?" "Don't you ma'am me, boy," she responded. I could feel my twitch as she said this. "I see this joke of a store is still hiring stupid little shits like you." Clearly, she remembered me as well. "What do you need, ma'am?" I said, getting more irritated. "I don't need a damn thing from you," she responded. "Just get me your damn manager." A shit-eating grin formed in my mouth. "Ma'am," I said, taking a satisfied breath, "I am the manager." A smug smile formed on my face as the look of shock and bafflement formed on her face. "Oh, you've got to be joking," she said in a nasty tone. "So not only will they hire any monkey off of the street, but now they're making you management, too. No wonder this store has gone to shit." That was the last straw. "Ma'am, you're going to have to leave," I said, completely discarding my fake helpful manager voice. She merely stood there and crossed her arms. My patience was now gone. "Get out of my store," I demanded, completely done with taking her shit. She then took a step toward me and shoved me to the floor. "Why don't you make me, boy?" The police were called shortly after, and they arrived to escort her out of the store. Surprisingly, she fought the police. She struggled and thrashed around like a wild animal, but before they were able to slap the cuffs on her, she broke free and tackled me to the floor. This 50-year-old woman flattened me like a quarterback, knocking the wind right out of my lungs. She then proceeded to scream like a psycho as she slapped and clawed at me like a bear. I covered my face with my arms, at which point she grabbed my left arm and bit right into it. Shit! I screamed as the officers were finally able to restrain her. I was immediately rushed to the hospital. She bit a huge chunk right out of me, and I needed stitches to close up the wound. Hell of a first day as manager, right? Well, things didn't end there. That would not be the last time I'd see her. Later that night, I was having a beer with Bill and George, and after they left, there was a knock at the door. I thought maybe one of them had left something behind, so I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole, verifying that it was Bill. He looked odd, though. He was looking down, and I initially thought he must have been drunk, which was unlike him to get done and buy a single beer. As I opened the door, I realized something was very wrong. He was standing there, his head still down, but I realized someone was standing behind him. Suddenly, the person standing behind him shoved him right at me. His body was limp as he crashed into mine, and we both went down. I screamed when I realized there was a knife sticking out of his back. I rolled him off of me and looked up to see his killer. It was her. It was Karen. Not only was she not in jail, but she had somehow tracked me down. What the hell is happening here, I thought. She walked toward me, a blank look on her sickly-looking face. Terrified, I crawled back away from her. She stopped when she got to Bill's lifeless body, stepping on his back as she yanked the knife right out of him. She never broke her line of sight of me as she did this, and as she held the knife once again, she continued to advance toward me. "What the hell do you want?" I asked, panic making my voice crack. "I need to see the manager," she answered, her voice raspy and demonic sounding. That same shit-eating grin from all of those years ago formed, and then eventually expanded into an evil-looking smile. I finally managed to get to my feet, but before I was able to run away, she swung her knife, slashing me across the back. "Shit!" I screamed in pain as I took off running toward the stairs leading to the second floor. I ran as fast as I could and realized she was chasing me, damn near matching my speed. I began to panic even more as I heard her bloodthirsty scream of rage as she charged toward me. But I managed to make it up the stairs to my bedroom and slammed the door shut before she got to me. I locked it and backed away. She pounded away on it, creating a loud and terrifying boom with each strike. I would have called 911 to report the psychopath trying to kill me, but I realized that I had left my phone downstairs. She kept screaming and screaming with every slam. "You have a customer in need of assistance," she screamed, followed by an insane cackle. Soon, I began to hear the sounds of cracking. She was going to break through the door. I began to lose my shit and was desperately trying to figure out what to do. I looked all around the room to find something, anything to defend myself with. Then I noticed the window. I could climb out, but there'd be nowhere to go. I couldn't get down without jumping or dropping down and breaking something. I decided to open the window and quietly hide under my bed. I dabbed my hand on my back where the knife wound was and wiped some blood on the curtain and ledge to make it look like I climbed out. Eventually, she managed to break through the door and I could see her pink jogging pants and running shoes slowly walk into the room. I covered my mouth as to not be heard by her and watched as she took steps toward the window. Silently, I slid from under the bed and slowly approached her from behind. It was at that moment that I had a choice to make. I could get out of there and risk her catching up to me, or I could end this right now. Feeling anxiety over the situation and the desire of vengeance for Bill, I charged right at her. But she turned around quickly, slamming her massive fist right into my face. As I fell to the floor once again, she mounted me and slammed the knife right into my left shoulder. I screamed in pain as she ripped it right back out and tried to do it again. Luckily, I grabbed a hold of her arm with both of my own, desperately trying to keep her from driving the knife into me again. As we wrestled, I managed to manipulate the position of the knife until the blade was facing her, and I drove it right into her throat. Just like that, she stopped fighting, and I kicked her off of me. Somehow, she managed to get back to her feet, and with a hateful look in her eyes, she pulled the stuck knife right out of her neck, gripping it once again as blood shot out of the wound. In a last-ditch effort, I charged her once again, this time shoving her massive frame right out of the window. She stuck the knife in my back as I used all of my strength to get her out of my house. As she tumbled out, I could hear her shriek like a beast one final time. Her scream was cut short as I heard a loud thud. I poked my head out of the window and saw her large, lifeless body. She laid there face up, a look of horror on her face as her dead eyes stared right at me. I once again paid a visit to the emergency room, receiving even more stitches. Unfortunately, Save Mart has shit medical insurance, so I was going to take a financial hit for this. On the bright side, I thought I wouldn't ever have to deal with this psychotic woman ever again. Unfortunately, she was only a single problem in a much wider issue. You may have noticed an increased number of Karen incidents, much more than ever. Unfortunately, my local Save Mart seems to be a breeding place for them, as more and more of them show up daily, all nearly as insane as the one who tried to kill me, the name of whom I will not disclose, as it would link back to my employers, which would not bode well for me. It's bad enough that I was not allowed to take paid medical leave, even with all my injuries and mental trauma of seeing Bill's dead body. But now I have to deal with this regularly. Did I die and go to hell, and this is my punishment? Trust me, if I could leave I would, but there are issues, which I won't get into right now, that prevents me from doing so. That's a story for another day, but right now I have to get back to work. This was my lunch break, but now it's been cut short as I've been called to another customer assistance issue in electronics. This is goddamn ridiculous and unacceptable, and I have half a mind to call corporate and demand to speak with the president of the company.